The loss already hurt, but what came after hit even harder. Marlon Humphrey stopped, took a deep breath, and finally said everything that had been stuck with him all season long. No dodging, no sugarcoating, no rehearsed answers. What was supposed to be just another high-level year turned into a raw, heavy confession, the kind that makes it clear something completely slipped out of control in Baltimore. And when one of the team's leaders decides to be this honest, it's never just noise. There's frustration, there's disbelief, there's self-criticism, and there's a future full of question marks staring everyone in the face. Every sentence Humphrey shared helps put together the puzzle of a season that ended way earlier than anyone expected. Stick around until the end, because what he said explains a lot more than just one loss. You know that feeling of going into a season convinced you're going to play your best football, only to realize, game after game, that it's just not happening? That's exactly the place Marlon Humphrey was speaking from. He didn't try to spin it. He didn't hide behind stats or team context. He looked back at the season and made it clear the level he showed was nowhere near what he expects from himself when he steps on the field. That statement hits even harder when you remember who we're talking about. Humphrey isn't just another name on the roster. He's been a defensive cornerstone in Baltimore, a true reference point. Someone who entered the season viewed as elite after coming off a first-team All-Pro year. That's why the drop-off bothered him so much. He knew he wasn't delivering the impact that had always defined his game, especially when the moments mattered most. The tone of his comments wasn't anger. It was real frustration. You could tell he'd been holding himself accountable all year, feeling it every time a big play slipped away, every time mistakes started to stack up. For a player used to controlling games with instincts, physicality, and confidence, not being able to flip that switch hurts more than any outside criticism ever could. And that feeling wasn't tied to just one bad game or one rough week. It followed Humphrey all season long, building and building until it finally burst, when everything ended sooner than expected. This confession is just the starting point of something bigger, because his frustration didn't come out of nowhere. It makes even more sense when he explains just how much work he put in heading into 2025. Humphrey made it clear that what bothered him most wasn't just playing poorly, but not understanding why it was happening. Physically, he said he felt better than he had in years. He trained hard, ran faster than ever in training camp, and ended the season believing he was fully ready to play at a high level. In his mind, all the signs pointed to a big year. But once the game started, none of that showed up. Plays that used to feel automatic started slipping away. Timing fell off. Confidence got tested week after week. For a veteran player, that's incredibly confusing. Your body feels right, the preparation is there, but the performance just doesn't follow. That makes it even tougher for someone who built his career on not making big mistakes. Humphrey was always known as steady, reliable, the kind of defender who rarely gave up explosive plays. Watching that identity fade, even while feeling like he did everything right before the season, was one of the hardest things for him to accept. And as the year went on, that frustration kept piling up. It wasn't just about what was going wrong on the field, but about not having an answer for why it was happening. That's when the confession shifts in tone, because it wasn't only him underperforming. The season itself ended in a way that caught everyone off guard. When the season finally ended, Humphrey admitted he was still trying to process it all. It wasn't just another loss. It felt like everything stopped way too fast for a team that came into the year believing it could make a deep run. He spoke like someone who fully expected to be playing in January, only to suddenly find himself answering goodbye questions. That shock shows up clearly in how he described the moment. There was no sense of planned ending, just a sudden cutoff. A veteran roster, loaded with proven names, simply ran out of road. And that stings even more when you think about the work that went into the season from start to finish. For Humphrey, that disappointment blends directly into personal accountability. It's not just the team fell short. It's the feeling that he didn't do enough to help prevent that ending. For players at his level, responsibility never stays only on the group. It always comes back to the mirror. That mix of surprise and frustration is what opened the door to deeper reflection. It wasn't enough to accept that it ended early. He needed to understand why. And that's where his confession moves beyond emotion and into something much more serious.
All right, we're already past the halfway point of this video, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't left a like yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content so I can keep bringing you the best news about the Baltimore Ravens. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and it really helps. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Humphrey made it clear this won't be a surface-level review. He talked about doing the deepest self-study of his entire career, which shows just how much the season affected him. This isn't about breaking down one or two plays. It's about looking at everything: decisions, reads, physical response, mental approach. That kind of statement shows maturity. Instead of looking for outside excuses, he accepted that something went wrong and needs to be understood. For a player who's already reached the top of his position, admitting there may be things he needs to relearn or it just isn't easy. But he spoke about it honestly. At the same time, there's an emotional weight to all of this. Rewatching an entire season knowing how it ended isn't comfortable. Every mistake carries the memory of missed chances, and an ending no one expected to face so soon. And even with that willingness to reinvent himself, Humphrey knows not everything is in his control. While he looks for answers and adjustments, the NFL keeps moving at its cold, business-first pace, and the franchise's decision start takes center stage. In the heaviest part of his confession, Humphrey showed that he fully understands how the league works. He didn't ask for guarantees. He didn't make public demands. He didn't put himself above the organization. He simply acknowledged that the Ravens will decide who stays and who goes, and that he's part of that process like anyone else. Even with positive words from Mike Tomlin, the reality in Baltimore doesn't change. Humphrey knows compliments don't secure contracts, and recent performance matters when it's time to decide the future. The tone was that of someone who's been in the league long enough to know how these stories usually play out. The most symbolic part is the shift in role. From leader on the field to someone waiting, watching, and accepting. Injuries around him created chances to prove his value, but the final result didn't match what he hoped for, and that speeds up decisions no one enjoys facing. In the end, Humphrey's confession lands as a mix of awareness, humility, and uncertainty. He understands where he stands. He understands the team's moment. And he knows that now the game is happening off the field, in a space where emotions matter less and decisions shape the next chapter. That statement from Marlon Humphrey perfectly sums up the Ravens season. Sky-high expectations, underwhelming results, and a heavy sense of frustration at the end. This isn't just about one loss or a disappointing record. It's about a player who's always been a standard setter, looking inward and admitting something didn't work. When a leader does that publicly, you really see how deep the impact was inside the locker room. Now everything changes. Humphrey heads into a period of serious reflection, while the team enters an off-season filled with tough choices. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is locked in. A future that once felt obvious is now full of uncertainty. This confession isn't a final chapter. It's a clear sign that major changes could be coming in Baltimore. And now I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Marlon Humphrey still has what it takes to bounce back with the Ravens, or does this confession feel like the beginning of the end of his time there? Drop your take below, because this conversation is just getting started, and the next chapter of this story could change everything for this team.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself.